Certainly, Xoli, political parties are all anxious on the floor, many of them having conversations with members of the media with regards to their reflections. And currently, we've got the African Independent Congress Councillor Margaret Arnold, who's joining me now for her reflections with regards to today's elections. Councillor Arnold, thank you so much for your time and for joining us today. You had your voting in Eldorado Park. You didn't opt for a special vote. You voted with the people, stood in the line. What was the experience like for you?
Good evening, Katlego, and thank you for having me. I'm really humbled by that. It was a fascinating feeling this morning because I haven't been in a queue as long as the one I was in this morning.
Really?
I think 1994 was the last that I was in a queue like that. It showed that people really wanted to vote. People were there to cast their vote. People were there to give somebody a mandate on behalf of them. So I was like surprised getting to the voting station at 7:45 and finding a long queue. So it was excitement, it was encouragement, it was like people are here, they want to change.
And what were your party's reflections of the AIC, their handling of the elections? We're getting mixed reactions from different political parties. What was the overall perspective from the AIC? I
think the AIC has done quite good. We need to look at the good also. They've done quite good. And I think that we do have a national PLC that has sat twice today, and we've reflected on what was not so good and what was good and what we wanted to have changed. I think there was a lot of complaints about the VDM, and even when I was in the queue this morning, it really didn't operate properly, but then they decided to go back and use the conventional voter's roll, which worked quite well, and it was quite fast. So that was one of the problems. The other problem was that in the far areas, it's as if the PEOs were not listening to the messages that were sent to them. And I think that they need to have more training. They can't give the training now, but I do believe there needs to be more training for PEOs and IEC staff. We know that they are recruited for this period, but I think the training was not enough. And of course, there was the issue of political parties bickering amongst each other in the lines and things like that. But overall, I think we have convinced the IEC. As you can see, the board shows that there are still voting stations that are open. Through the discussions with the PLC, we've actually convinced the IEC that you don't turn back anybody. If there are people in queues, they need to vote. You need to ensure that they vote. Irrespective, I think one of the political parties said, even if they vote until 2 o'clock, but people need to vote because this is what the parties asked for, and this is what the IEC as well asked for. So I think, yes, they were good, yes, they were bad, but it's also human errors that were made, and I think we've reached the strides where we are able to see the IEC is also coming to the party to assist.
Speaking about the IEC's readiness, and in terms of the training that you make mention with regards to those that are supposed to be assisting people, and why we are now seeing some of those long snaking queues and some people turning back for various reasons. I mean, everyone has been mentioning that this is 2024 is the new 1994. So surely the IEC should have had some kind of anticipation with regards to numbers, with regards to how many people will be turning up. Why do you think there's still that shortfall in terms of them being ready and in them being able to give what was expected?
I cannot really comment completely on it, but I think it's a lack, as I said, it's a lack of training, and it's a lack of people not understanding what they are doing. I think the IEC should actually, as from the day when we close this elections and we have the results and we're saying this is the results, they should actually then start recruiting and then start looking at training people and not do it 2 months or 3 months before the time. I think that is where the shortfall is and where it's always been. And if you don't prepare for something after you've finished the first one, obviously you are not going to do well. But I also believe that they are trying. They are really honestly trying, and I think, yes, it is right that 30 years after, this is the 30 years after they've been there, they should have been more savvy and should have had people trained. So I think they should take the call, heed to the call that all political parties are making and train people properly, because we know that they are good in what they are doing. We know that they are committed to the country. We know that they want to have a free, fair elections, but if their staff is not playing up to it, then we cannot call it free and fair.
Most certainly. I mean, the IEC's chair as well as the CEO mentioned that they are releasing more staff members before the voting closed in order to assist with some of those lines. What was your take in some of those voting districts like we saw in Kwamashu and Thokoza, where people are still waiting outside? There's the issue of potential risks in terms of violence and crime because people are waiting in long queues into the night and possibly into the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah, I think once again, maybe I'm sounding like someone that's been repeating the same thing, but this all comes out of what our NPLC has said, because we were actually saying to them, the staff that you are going to bring in to assist with the counting, you need to bring them earlier in. And thus you see that they have come in earlier so that they can assist with the long queues. We've even told them how to split the voters' roll. We've said to them how to split the queues so that you have more streams in the different voting stations. And that is exactly when we walked out of the meeting, a few minutes after that, that is the message that we got, that they sent out to the PEOs, and I also saw that there was a statement released, and that is what the CEO said. So I do think working together is really helping us, but the issue is that we're now sitting with these long queues. We're now having women that must walk in rural areas and go home, and anything can happen to them. Even in the areas where we live, imagine me having to have been in a queue this late and walking back home. Anything can happen. You know, we have areas where there's shooting, where there's crime is vibrant. So I do believe that the IEC needs to shake up themselves in that aspect, and I think it's that aspect that is busy giving us what we are having now.
All right, so we will continue to see you here. You said you're possibly going to be sleeping here for the next couple of days. How are you anticipating the process of getting the results? Are you going to be camping out at the Rock?
Well, I've been doing it for years. Go home in the wee hours of the morning, just go and have a bath and sleep for about 5 winks and then come back and be here. It's so exciting when you see the numbers come up, when you see you getting close to 1 seat, when it gets to 2 seats. There's just this adrenaline that pumps in you, and you just want to be here. Even if you are home, you'll switch on the TV and say, isn't there any results? Or you'll call someone, has there been anything that comes up? So I think, yes, I've been staying here to the morning hours. Let me say to you, in 2019, I stayed here and the results came out and the event for the announcement to happen, and I had to rush to a place called Maraba Stad in Pretoria to go and get something to dress and to have a bath quickly somewhere in the bathrooms and get dressed. But that is just the excitement and wanting to be a part of it, because this is like democracy is working, and people has given you a mandate to govern them. I think that's the excitement. Just
on a serious note, you are part of a coalition government in the city of Johannesburg. And what role do you think small parties will play in this national government, and what that coalition could possibly look like?
Parties play a big role in coalition governments. For people that don't know, coalition in the city of Johannesburg came because of the smaller parties. Don't let the ANC, the EFF, and everybody else fool you and say it was their idea. No, it wasn't. It came from the smaller parties. On the 4th of December 2021, I decided to call political parties together, the smaller parties, and say, guys, you are one. How are you going to deal with this issue? Let's get together. And we formed what we call the minority opposition parties bloc, and we were called the mob. And then we said, no, minority opposition parties. And we went to talk to the different bigger political parties and said to them, we cannot be sitting in opposition. Let us get into government. And we formed the government that you find, the government of local unity in the city of Johannesburg. But we play a major role. If those 12 parties remove themselves, the city of Johannesburg will fall. And if we don't go into coalition with any of the bigger parties, be it the DA, be it whoever, they will fall. So we are a major force. We are actually the kingmakers. But because we come from different political parties, sometimes our parties give us a different mandate. But I think smaller political parties will play a big role within the government, whether it be national or provincial. But I'm also happy for the new bill that is coming out so that we don't have this to and fro that we saw in the city of Johannesburg. There's stability now, but we've been seeing a lot of to and fro. But I do think there's a big space for smaller political parties within the coalitions, and they can make a difference, and they can keep the bigger parties on their toes.
And speaking of that back and forth, there certainly was a lot of challenges that came with that. Just very quickly in closing, what lessons could be learned from those challenges that we possibly could put in the national?
The city could not move forward with doing certain things because this political party would come in and use, this coalition would come in and do their thing. The next coalition comes in and does their thing. I think the main thing is when political parties come in and coalitions come in, if there was good that the previous people did, the previous coalition did, carry on with it. Carry on with it and improve it. Don't take it out of context and decide it's because we didn't do it, it needs to go. Carry on with it because it's not you suffering, it is the people out there suffering. And if we are saying we are people-centered, we will think about the people before we think about ourselves.
All right, Councillor Arnold, thank you so much for your time. We certainly will be seeing you camping out here at the Rock over the next couple of days. Thank you for speaking to us and giving us those reactions. That was African Independent Congress Councillor Margaret Arnold telling us there about the reflections of her party and what they would be looking for in the next couple of days. For now, I'll cross over to my colleague Vuyo Mvoko, who's out on the floor getting some more reactions. I believe he's with the National Press Club at the moment, and he's going to be getting some of their sentiments.